Hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible Verse by Verse, a plain and simple study of the entire Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. We are in 1 Kings chapter 4, and Solomon is getting ready, is preparing to build the temple. But this chapter is going to give us a kind of an overview of his administration, and more so the kind of the wisdom, and it's kind of setting up the wisdom and how he is going to operate. Now, as we will read some of these names, I apologize in advance for butchering these names. A lot of them, and just not my forte. But anyway, I'll do the best I can, which won't be that bad, that good. All right, here we go. Verse 1, King Solomon ruled over Israel. Now, so this would be one of the last times that you would see the unity of Israel being ruled over until after the Babylonian exile. And so the first was called the Northern Kingdom versus the Southern Kingdom. Okay, but he ruled over all of Israel, all the 12 tribes, all of the 12 territories. Also, Solomon ruled in a time of peace. Okay, he ruled in the time of peace. Alright, so it says, verse 2, and these were his officials: Azariah, son of Zadok the priest, Elihorephat, and Ahijah, the son of Shisha, the secretaries, Jehoshaphat, son of Ahilud, court historians, Benaniah, son of Jehoiada, in charge of the army, Zodak and Abiathar, the priest, Azariah, son of Nathan, in charge of the deputies, Zabud, son of Nathan, a priest and advisor to the king, Ahishar, in charge of the palace, and Adoram, son of Abda, in charge of the forced labor. Now, this forced labor is going to be very interesting later on. I'll get into that in a moment. Verse 7, Solomon had 12 deputies for all Israel. They provided food for the king and his household. Each one made provisions for 1 month out of the year. Kind of interesting, these deputies, one of their purposes was to provide for the king. Now, later on, further down, we'll get into what they provided. Okay. And then because there's a point to this that I want to make about this provision. It was a hefty system, hefty taxes. Verse 8, these were the names: Ben-Hur in the hill country of Ephraim, Ben-Decker in Makaz, Shalabim, Beth-Shemesh, and Elihebeth, Henah, Ben-Hesi, and Arubath. He had Sukkah and the whole land of Hefer. Ben-Adab, Ben Adinab, and all of Naphath, Tephath, daughter of Solomon, was his wife. Tephath, daughter of Solomon, was his wife. Benah, son of Ahilud, in Tanakh, Megiddo, and all of Beth Shean, which was besides Zeredan, below Jezreel, from Beth Shean to Abel Melahah, as far as the other side of Joachim. Now again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing these names right. Ben Gerber in Ramoth Gilead, he had the villages of Jar, son of Manasseh, which are in Gilead, and he had the region of Argob, which is Bashan, 60 great cities with walls and bronze bars. And Adinabab, son of Iddo, and Menahem, Ahimaaz, in Nephatiria. He also married the daughter of Solomon, Basemath, Hananiah, son of Hushai, Asher, and Beloth, Jehoshaphat, son of Perez, and Issachar, Shimi, son of Elah, the Benjamite. Now remember, Shimi is a very popular name, so this is not the Shimi that came out and cursed David. Remember that Shimi he kind of put to death. Verse 19, Gerber, son of Uri, in the land of Gilead, in the country of Sihon, king of the Amorites, and Og, king of Bashan, and there was one deputy in the land of Judah. Judah and Israel were as numerous as the sand by the sea, and they were eating, drinking, and rejoicing. Now, again, this kind of summarizes Solomon's time, okay, his time of his reign, during the time of peace. David built the kingdom, established the kingdom during the time of war. Solomon is enjoying this time, okay. Verse 21, Solomon ruled over all the kingdoms from the Euphrates River to the land of the Philistines as far as the borders of Egypt. They offered tribute and served Solomon all the days of his life. Solomon's provisions for one day were 100 bushels of fine flour and 300 bushels of meal, fatted oxen, range oxen, 100 sheep, besides deer, gazelle, roebucks, and a pen-fed poultry. Now, again, this is, you see this just fatness, opulence, overabundance here, which one, it showed Solomon's wisdom, but there was another side of this as well. But remember, this is how Solomon lived. The people of the land prospered as well, but this is focusing on, this is how Solomon lived. Verse 24, for he had dominion over everything west of the Euphrates, from Tifsah to Gezer, and over all the kings west of the Euphrates. He had peace. He had peace on all his surrounding borders. Throughout Solomon's reign, Judah and Israel lived in safety from Dan to Beersheba, each man under his own vine and under his own fig tree. Okay, so this was the time of Solomon. Verse 26, Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots, 12,000 horsemen. Each of those deputies for a month in turn provided food for King Solomon, and for everyone who came to King Solomon's table. They neglected nothing. Each man brought the barley and the straw for the chariots and teams, and the other horses, for chariot teams and the other horses, to the required place according to his assignments. Now again, you can kind of seeing how you can say how fat he lived, how big and large. Verse 29. God gave Solomon wisdom, very great insight and understanding, as vast as the sand on the seashore. Now you see this language, just so you know, a lot of times it's kind of a euphemism. Okay, so notice his understanding is vast as the sand on the seashore. You see the same thing. Israel was as numerous as the sand on the seashore. The reality is you could number Israel very much. Okay, all right. Verse 30. Solomon's wisdom was greater than the wisdom of all the people of the east, greater than all the wisdom of Egypt. He was wiser than anyone, wiser than Ethan the Arizite. Now, Ethan the Arizite, and then he says, and Heman, Kolka, and Dodai, sons of Malah, His reputation extended to all the surrounding nations. Now, these people here, notice he mentioned the people of the east. So there was this wisdom, of course, in the east. Notice he said the wisdom of Egypt. That's kind of interesting. Remember, before really God destroyed the nation of Egypt, there is a lot of wisdom there. We see that with the pyramids, but even beyond the pyramids, science. They were very wise in science. We have mummies or mummified corpses that is impressive after 4,000 years. All right. So Ethan, the Arahite, he is credited for writing Psalms 89, and of course as a very wise counselor to David. Verse 32. Solomon composed 3,000 proverbs, and his songs numbered 1,005. The book of Psalms, as we call them, is actually a collection of psalms, okay, in which David probably wrote the vast majority of them. There were some by Moses, and then, as I said, some by Ethan and other writers. In other words, so that there's 150 psalms. Notice Solomon had wrote 1,000 of them, and then also the same thing with the book of Proverbs. If you count all of the proverbs from in the book of Proverbs itself, they don't amount to 3,000. Okay, in fact, I don't even know if they amount to 1,000. But they just kind of show you. Or one other thing, let me say this: the book of Proverbs is really the only book that you can actually read each verse or each set of verses or each proverb as its kind of separate context. Now, I say that because a lot of people study the Bible as if they can just open it up and they take a verse out, and that has been disastrous and for understanding Scripture. But the book of Proverbs is the only one you could do that. Verse 33 is that he described trees from the cedars in Lebanon to the hyssop growing out of the walls. He also taught about animals, birds, reptiles, and fish. People came from everywhere, sent by every king on earth who had heard of his wisdom and to listen to Solomon's wisdom. Now, we're going to see this later on with the Queen of Sheba, how she visited him. And she was just flabbergasted by what she saw. Okay? And so you also now kind of get understanding of how the people, again, we call them philosophers, the Greeks, their wisdom, how they would sit down and just kind of study things. They just kind of sit and look and just, let me just study the birds, study everything. But notice, God is the one who gave Solomon this wisdom. That it is God who gives wisdom. And even in this, what's going to be interesting about Solomon's wisdom, that it doesn't override the sinful nature. And that is going to be the most amazing thing about Solomon. We'll get to that later, of course, in a later study. But if anything, we should certainly be praying, God, give me wisdom. As I said in the last study, the greatest thing you can ask for is wisdom, more than wealth. As I said, we just, around the country, I don't know if they've announced by the time of this recording here, I don't know if they've kind of revealed a person just won $1 billion in the lottery. But if he doesn't have wisdom, one, he's not going to be happy. He's not going to know how to spend the money. He could lose the money. We can go on and on and on and on and on. But the greatest thing you could ask for is wisdom, because the wisdom will get you wealth. The wisdom will cause you to have long life, safe life, right? A safety. And all of us are prey to foolishness. Now, of course, we'll get into that more when we get into the book of Proverbs written by Solomon. And we're kind of get more in depth into how God defines wisdom versus how excuse me, versus how the world define wisdom. All right, guys. That is our study. Don't forget to like and share these videos. Add your comments. Look forward to your comments. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. See you in the next study.